technologies, and I live in Redmond. I have been in technology for a little over 20 plus, 22 years maybe. And really started, I was, we're having a conversation, and we were talking on our way in here. I was actually born here in Houston, right across the street in CUNY Homes. I have to know my direction. And we moved away when I was really young, maybe 4 or 5 years old, to Ohio. So I grew up in Ohio, and that is where my mother went into tech when she was, when there were really not a lot of folks like her that were in technology at the time. And so that's where she was in HR and higher technology people. So she was always showing us the kind of people she hires. So I've always had this interest and curiosity in tech. Left Ohio and then came here and wanted to go to HBCU. So came to TSU actually, but only for about 6 months. And then my mother got really ill. And then I headed back to Ohio and ended up getting my first tech job where she would have been working when she was sick. So all of that led to, I've had startup companies. I still have about 10 or 12 startup companies that I work with in the portfolio, and have been deploying Microsoft products actually for a very long time. So I've been with Accenture, a lot of consulting firms, working with Microsoft, and then decided that it was time to start helping other companies in a different way, and went on board full-time with Microsoft about 7 years ago, 6.5, 7 years ago. And now, really in a season that we've been able to touch, I don't know how many of you are familiar with augmented reality? Yeah. Apple has an AR right on the phone where, remember Pokemon? All of you familiar with that? Yeah? Yeah, Pokemon Go, right on your phone. How many of you played it, or at least tried it and downloaded it? What was it like interacting with augmented type of reality? What was that like? You didn't grab the mic and talk because this is all interactive. Oh, okay, good. Okay. Anybody want to say what that was like? What that interaction was like? Yeah. And please be sure to use your mic because we're. I think they'll need to. Okay, excellent.
All right, I'm Julian. So I thought it was extremely interesting. One, because it forced people to go outside, and I guess nowadays like people have. There's a huge problem with obesity. So like with Pokemon Go, it forced you to go outside. It forced you to walk around and go find Pikachu or Charizard. Yeah, so I don't know, I really like enjoyed the program, and catching Pokemon, it kind of like made me think about like being like 12 years old again.
So can you imagine, so that's the business that I lead. It's called mixed reality or extended reality. And it is a way that we are able, I work with companies all around the world. So I might be in the Netherlands working with a physician who wants to use mixed reality to determine where they can't see the 2D, typically the images. And if anybody is in or understands how you've gone and gotten your X-rays, and it's a certain dimension that you're not able to see. Well, imagine your anatomy in 3D. And so being able to leverage 3D technology along with intelligence superimposed on top of it that can say that as a patient, he's going to perform this type of surgical procedure. He can perform the entire surgical procedure in an augmented or mixed reality world, and then superimpose holographic capability right on top of your anatomy and give 100% accuracy in a high impact environment surgical approaches, and then can collaborate through holographic capabilities with other physicians all around the world. And then they can see the surgical procedures and make recommendations in real time. And that is where we are, where technology that you guys see as gaming or an interaction. And this is why we're here. This is start understanding, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the program. But I wanted to keep it, kind of make it real. What I do is that my world is all about infusing intelligence, AI, machine learning, cognitive capability, mixed reality. I work with converging
all of those, all of the latest technologies into a single solution for very sophisticated use cases, whether it is in mechanical engineering. If you were in the industry, we call this the fourth industrial revolution. So you guys are in a complete digital era, where industry companies, where you think about manufacturing, kind of the way that you see it today. Tomorrow, you're going to be seeing robots side by side. We're doing that today, where we're infusing intelligence in robots working side by side, whether it's a robotic arm that's taking inventory off of a line, and then we're putting intelligence in that arm, and then they're working side by side, kitting and inventory management and all types of things, and they're working with a human. So then we have to think about the human and the machine interacting together. That's real for your industry. Psychology, we have to understand, how do we infuse in these autonomous things? How do we infuse the level of intelligence, leveraging true psychological best practices? Because in AI, you can sense, right? We're teaching machines how to sense, how to think like us, how to do things better than us, more efficient. And in a moment, we're going to talk about why, because it's not to replace human lives or to replace jobs. It is 100% to make us better, to make us even more intelligent in areas that are safer. So if you think about mining, and think about hazardous situations that we used to put in harm's way people in, to explode a site or some type of hazardous situation in any other field. And now we can create some type of digitization and automation to replace things like, if you're in a smoke or hazardous area and you're a fireman, and now you no longer have to go into that fire and risk your life to sense and see, because AI, we have custom vision and all types of capabilities so that we can classify objects and be able to see and learn all on a potential drone. So this is the world you are in, and it doesn't matter what field you're in. It doesn't matter the industry. All of you are digital. When you have your mobile in your, well, you are a digital citizen. You are a digital worker. And that's what we're really here to talk about, is how is it that you have a role not just in politics, but you helped us to understand in life, what does the next generation digital citizen look like? Does that make sense so far, that you understand the responsibility in the era that you're in, that it's no longer about sitting down in front of the television, watching TV every day, on your phone, and interacting with people around you? That's time that could be monetized. And so you have to look at yourself and say, for everything that I do online, how is it that I can monetize that? People need your data. They want to know who you are, where you are. So here you are operating the way that you've been operating for the last 5 or 10 years. And you don't even realize that you are a walking, intelligent, brilliant being who adds so much value to this earth. And you probably don't even know what to do with that in this era. And that's what we're going to unlock today. Is that fair? Does that make sense so far? Okay, go ahead.
Also, I would add, in terms of getting in the mindset to what I call think about thinking, in terms of looking at artificial intelligence, I think we have to talk about the ethics of it. And when we look at singularity in terms of machines being able to have the power to outthink the human brain, is it for good or is it for bad? And so that has to be a part of the broader conversation. And as Trice mentioned, you have everything you input is part of a digital footprint that you establish and you create. But we look today, and I think we see algorithms, which is inputted by human beings in terms of coding. We have to think about who's doing these kinds of things and what are the impacts. How does it impact on people differently, for example? And I'm sure you may have read about some of the facial images and recognitions. And I think Google, or one of the big companies, they did something years ago, and actually for African Americans, that came back some of the images that reflected gorillas and these kinds of things. So it's not all about good. So we have to talk about ethics, and you're students of government, and so that has to be a part of the conversation. And you are absolutely correct. It's designed, and the aim in terms of the economic impact is to make life easier for us. But we have to understand that artificial intelligence algorithms are being used on a daily basis to make fundamental decisions in terms of our lives. If we look at the criminal justice system, we talk about criminal justice reform. We have to look at the input. Judges are making decisions whether or not you get bail or whether or not you're released on parole based upon who you are, a zip code, or your name. For example, I was reading not so long ago in terms of if you were to Google, put 3 African American names in, it would come back, for example, in terms of the images that are out there, they'll come back as a mugshot. But if you were to put in names like Hillary or Josh or what have you, they would come back. It would be a high school yearbook picture. So we have to talk about the disparate impacts and the effects on that. We welcome Trice here, but we want to be a part of this discussion. And I tell my students all the time in terms of American government, we need to be at the point where the decisions are made. So we need to be a part of the hackathons, we need to talk about coding, and we need to be a part of the development of the algorithms if we're going to talk about justice in this system. So I wanted to put that out there so we can wrap our heads around that so we can have a very good discussion and conversation this morning.
Thank you, and you're spot on. You know, 10 years ago, well, up to 3 years ago, in order to participate in that ecosystem of developing algorithms, you had to be a developer. You don't anymore. Not just Microsoft, but other companies are releasing tools right on your mobile, on your phone. And if you were to go to any of them and try to say, I just want to download pre-built AI services, and exactly what you're talking about is a way that you can classify images and say, I have 1,000 cats. So then what happens is you can download pictures of 1,000 cats, classify them that these are cats. And then you can go further in metadata and to classify and add more attributes around it. And then you can classify dogs and say, here are 1,000 dogs. Classify that. And you can do that through click and drag, through tools that you have available today. And then you can test the machine learning model to say, did the model recognize some object? And you put a bottled water. Now it's a bottled water that the cat is drinking. And object knows that this is a cat. It knows it's water. And then intelligence bridges and converges the two together. So this is the way classification works. So if you have someone who's responsible for algorithms who are saying, if a name is, my name is my full name if I were to give it to you, or if a name, let's just say Shaquan, because I know Shaquan, a good friend, and then they're going to list a bunch of names and say, if this person is Ravish, if this person is Shaquan, and then they're going to classify, well, who's doing that classification? And this is exactly what Dr. Adams is talking about, is that if we don't have knowledge, and we don't have an understanding of the things around us, how is it that you can be influential in changing the things around you? So it is important to understand your data. It is important also to read and to understand what's happening around us, because you have the power to leverage your social platforms that you interact with every day to influence the way that the people who are responsible so think about when you click the wrong thing. You go to Yahoo or something. Let's say you click something wrong. What happens with all of your advertisements just by clicking one wrong thing? What happens? About
Trying to do it, right?
Exactly. So again, behind the scene, there are, as Dr. Adams said, algorithms that are tracking every moment of your life. Whenever you send a text, now, it will actually, Google is actually just came out with this a month ago, and I'm ashamed of it because we've infused a lot of things in our applications, but now with Google, with Word, it will complete your entire paragraph practically. Why? Because it remembered and it learned you. That's what learning models do. They're learning so imagine you walking around collecting data every day, and there's someone behind the scene paying attention to everything that's going on, and they're creating a digital you. Why? So that they can increase personalization, so that they can target ads, And this gets back to segmentation and targeting in politics. And people driving and controlling what it is that you get upset, what you get angry about. And that's what I kind of like to talk a bit about now. So I'd like to know, are any of you at a stage where you are frustrated at, I mean, do you watch what's going on around you in government and in politics and see things repeated over and over again? Or what's your, I want to know the sentiment of the things that you're seeing so I could see from your eyes and address what you're seeing in politics from your eyes. Because this is not about ideology. It has nothing to do with if you're Democrat or Republican or independent. This has to do with information and data that you're given. And how intelligent and knowledgeable are you to respond and react with the right reaction? Because what ends up happening, and even down to bots, so there are bots that literally are programmed and controlled. Every time you see a line, somebody commenting on something, it may not be a human being. People are programming things behind the scene to control you. And because you are not engaged and involved in what is going on, you don't even know that your mind is being used. So I need to understand and get a baseline of what are you seeing in politics and in the media. And I need to know that from your heart and your soul, because we have to deal with that in technology. Anybody want to go first? Because this is interactive. I want you to reflect and think about what you're seeing in politics and media. Think about the adults. Think about the maybe the bickering back and forth. What are you seeing? What in your eyes and in your heart? Go ahead and grab the mic.
I just had it might be a little off topic, but it kind of ties into what you both were talking about. Are you familiar with the Ghost of the Machine?
Not really.
No.
It's about how if you make the machine, you give it too much intelligence, then it becomes its own person. So like as you're saying, like you aren't as ethical, but
Yeah, we've seen some of that in the bots that she's talking about.
Yeah, so to give you a perfect example, and this goes back to ethics. In California, and I think this is appropriate, and I'll stick above ground, because this has been concerning. We've been doing a lot of investigation in this. So there are dolls that are just dolls. They're adult dolls. And what they've done with these adult dolls is they've actually put in AI and cognitive intelligence inside of the adult dolls so that you can sit down. And this is, actually, I brought a video to share one of them with you. It's called, it's a robotic citizen. And they released the robotic citizen, and she was able to have a conversation. So she is a doll. She looks human. They put a suit on her, and they tested it, and she could answer questions, because what's happening is there are a whole bunch of pieces that you really got to get familiar with cognitive. There's natural language understanding, where you can understand what you're saying. So when you call a call center and they say, "Hello, may I help you?" and you're not talking to a human being, it's called natural language processing and natural language understanding, where they can understand and we can translate and put that in writing. And then we can put it into a machine so it can understand. So now you have a problem, a true ethical problem, where they want to create this in politicians, where they want to be able to mine the data, crawl data from all these different places, and then to be able to create the perfect set of politicians for the perfect set of citizens. We have to pay attention to what is going on, because that is when we have to raise our voices and get government involved to write policy and legislation to stop the humanization of robots to the point where you are now influencing policy. That's why we have to awaken. And so that's a very good point, because it exists today, and then they're using it for other purposes, so we have to be very aware.
I just want to like go off what he is saying, like when you watch movies like I, Robot and stuff like that, like how you expect us to like trust robots? Because like the average human being, if you given a robot better intelligence than us, like you making them better than us, right? Like the average human being, they striving for power. So like if a robot become more powerful than us, how you expect us to stop the robot? If they smarter than us, they better than us. Like even if you all have a kill switch for that robot, they could become more intelligent than us, and we can't shut them down at all. So they completely take over the world. Like how would y'all stop that?
That's fair, but it is a movie. That's fair. But, so keep in mind the intelligence always has to still have humanization because someone has to program it. So the movies go a little too far, and that's why I said I want to debunk the myth. Yes. Oh, yeah, because I want to answer that, but yes.
I just heard that they were teaching the robots artificial intelligence how to teach themselves.
Yes.
So they're constantly learning.
It's called machine learning and deep neural network. It's deep neural learning, and that's also ethics that we have to deal with. But it's still learning from data. It's not learning on its own. That's why I said ethically we have a responsibility that the people that are creating content, creating sentiment, creating classifications to classify data, and then being able to really write that intelligence, yes, it learns, but it learns from data, right? Does that make sense? It can't learn out external to anything else. It can't look at you and learn. It will never have that level of cognitive understanding ever. It's probably going to have book intelligence, and it'll have data intelligence. But we're really struggling with how to give it human emotion, how to think. And we'll remember the car that had a choice. It was an autonomous vehicle. It was in Phoenix, I think, and it had a choice because the people were walking across the street. It could not determine, do I go left and hit a tree, or do I go right and hit the people? So we'll never get to a point where it can outthink us and ration, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But it also gets into, and it's not all in movies, because we can recall the incident, I think it was in 2016, right after the Black Lives Matter protest, where I think it was the first recorded robot killing of a human being in Dallas. And the questions have to be addressed in terms of when do you deploy, what decisions are made, which is a human factor. And so again, it goes back to the earlier concern that I raised in terms of ethical decision making, in terms of whether it's used for good or for bad. And we can morph into a discussion in terms of deployment of robots in terms of warfare and these kinds of things. So that has to be a part of the national security debate in terms of how do we defend and protect the country.
But it's taught.
It's taught. It's taught.
It's taught.
So
it doesn't act on its
It's
own.
real life, and it's not all in Hollywood in terms of these things.
Well, I meant the extent of learning on its own. In the movies, they make it look like robots learn on their own, and then they take over. And that's what I meant.
Yes.
The learning on their own piece, yes, they're self-learning, but self-learning through data, if that makes sense. Yeah, very good point.
Like you say they could never like outthink us, right? Like,
Oh, no, they can't outthink us in data. But we have multiple dimensions of our thoughts. Think about it. We make interpretive decisions and cognitive decisions based on emotion, based on what we hear. So when you make a decision, you're not making a decision just on information. You have multiple dimensions. We have to create multiple dimensions for robots to have all of the dimensions that we do. Does that make sense?
It makes a whole lot of sense, right?
Man, you don't think like that's dangerous? Like a robot knowing all this stuff and they don't have emotion at all?
That's why we're trying to teach it emotion. So we're teaching it, yeah. So that's where whole sentiment comes in. So you'll hear a lot about sentiment analysis. You'll hear a lot about programmatic ways that we can program emotions into robots. I think that, and that was something that we talked about to deal with, there is a misuse of robots than there is a good, where robots can partner alongside to achieve things. Remember I said the fire and being able to send a drone in to detect if anyone is there. So there's a lot of good. We just have to work together to figure out how do we start to influence good, if that makes sense, and not have fear. Yes, go ahead.
And it comes back to government and good governance in terms of the public good. And how do we do it in terms of your Congress and your state legislative bodies? They need to be a part of the discussion in terms of how these things will be misused. And even the driverless cars, in terms of whether or not with the accident, that morphs into decisions of the National Transportation and Safety Administration. So they're congressional committees. So still, I think there would have to be human decisions in terms of the policy-making process and analytical in terms of making sure that there's safety protocols that are in place to check things that will go amok and that are bad. Yes.
Oh, can you use the mic, Mr. President? Thank you. Wonderful questions. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Adams, your last statement kind of laid the predicate for what I wanted to comment on. And you all may have mentioned this prior to my coming in, but in Houston, very recently, I would say within the last month, there was a company that came in and wanted to introduce a sexually oriented business. Which
robots, the pornographic
sexual robots, right?
I tried to stay away. Notice I said I'm going to stay above.
Yeah, the brothel robot house. My student.
I said that I was going to stay above board, so that's
But I
above
mean,
board.
it is what it is. Okay?
It is. No. It's
And so to kind of pick up on what Dr. Adams was saying, at some point, I think government has to step in and keep us grounded in reality, if that makes any sense or whatever.
Your Mayor Turner got involved, didn't he?
Our Mayor
I thought I
Turner,
saw
he came
that.
out, he was
I thought I saw that.
Yeah, Mayor Turner was really quick off the mark. I was so proud of him. He said it ain't gonna happen.
But there's no policy.
And exactly. Well, they created some in the form of an ordinance that allows them.
City Council.
Yes, the mayor and city council
So
creating an
part of the
ordinance.
public debate.
Exactly. It'll probably end up on a ballot somewhere, but for right now, I think the ordinance was couched in terms that allows that business to sell their robotic dolls, but you can't interact with them to any extent whatsoever on their premises.
Oh, I remember that,
Just
and
buy
then
it
they were
and
going to
take it
allow them
home.
to test them out before they leave, and try before you buy, kind of things like,
Just like any policy, it could be tested on the micro level in terms of, we're not in Las Vegas, Nevada, all right? So some things will not go down in Houston that would take place other places.
But this goes back to, I have been saying that with the advent of all of these things, and this is why your generation is so special, you have an opportunity to deep think, an opportunity to say that if we have access to all of these things, what is the implication? And be proactive in helping legislative bodies come together, and even before we face these things, start to say, what does the world look like with autonomous AI? And think that through and how it impacts your life, which is why we wanted to host this, because the goal is to get a hackathon, a political hackathon, where you guys have time to interact with one another and create what we call this conceptual body of laws to say, how do we stay safe? How is it that we are able to keep governance? You keep going back to that. But if no one is thinking about, then things like what you just mentioned, and I apologize, your name again? Margaret? Things that Margaret just
Our
said.
professors here.
Awesome, Margaret. Nice to meet you. And things that Margaret is saying are why it is that you guys should be spending more time deep thinking with one another.
Yes. But also, I think it goes back in terms of being at the point where the decisions are made and who's there. And I think if you reflect the people who are in this room, we're not always a part of the conversation. So we need to be there. That's why the hackathons, and certainly we'll welcome you back in January. We'll try to pull that off. But the coders, I think they need to include people of colors and the people who are making the algorithms. It's very important because you look at a particular population, and again, it goes back to the criminal justice. We cannot talk about criminal justice reform if we're not a part of that dialogue and the discussion in terms of what the reform should be. All right. So again, coders, they input what goes into the algorithms, and we should be a part of that as well. Thank you.
Very good point. Very good point, Dr. Adams.
Like if you talk about jobs, right? They have. I think I saw it on Facebook one time. They is a robot, is a machine that replaced the employees in McDonald's. Like, you say the robots wasn't made to like get rid of us or anything, right? But you don't have to pay a robot to work if you program it properly. So like, as humans having jobs to take care of their families and stuff, how that's supposed to work?
You are brilliant. Let me tell you why. Bill Gates, for the last 2 years, y'all know who Bill Gates is, Microsoft, has stated that if we start to replace workers, then there ought to be taxes. So those businesses that are putting in robots instead of and replacing people, he is advocating taxes back to the community, right? So you've hit upon a very special point, but I will say this. We're really facing, when I go in a manufacturing plant or when I go into other places and we have to look at ways that AI is going to be making things efficient. But there are two things that are happening. Think about the old days when there were horses, right? There were cowboys. They got displaced, didn't they? When the car came, right? Think about the taxis. I don't have a car anymore. I sold my car 2 years ago, and I have a driver everywhere I go. I don't drive. What did I do? I used to rent cars because I'm a global traveler, so I don't rent cars anymore. What does that do? So everything has its cycle. You guys are now in this hyper-connected digital era. It'll have its cycle, right? You didn't have Lyft and Uber. What happened before Lyft? People would drive home drunk. They may still do, but many of them don't anymore because they have options to be safe. So while technology has its replacements, it also is opening up new opportunities, because I talk to people every day that I'm in Lyft or in Uber every day who they make money just driving around, and many of them, they've turned it into a full-time job. They have their own company in their car. So while we're displacing something else, it's opening up the door for us to go off and create new innovation, which is why it is critical that your skill set that you're developing, you don't think about just doing one thing. You think about everything that's possible. I had someone email me on LinkedIn, and I'm not connected to them, but it said unemployed. They do work here on an offshore oil rig. They do maintenance on big equipment, and he has been out of a job for a while. I'm thinking to myself, well, that you maybe have a job for a while longer, but we are digitizing that whole space. So turn your IP and your tacit knowledge into money. Go off and create a company and say, I'm going to give you technology people everything I know how to do to make this apart, because you're going to put it in digitization, meaning that when you have a big turbine and it has multiple parts and it takes a special, unique individual to fix it, they now can deliver to your mobile augmented Pokemon, right? They can actually go through a cycle in 3D to fix the part, and you don't even have to have the knowledge. You're programming a machine to teach someone who normally wouldn't have had that expertise to deploy that expertise. So now you can become the expert behind the scene and say, hey, I used to work on an oil rig for 20 years. Now I'm going to work from home, make more money selling my knowledge. Let me tell you something. That's where we need to be. It is no longer an excuse that there is a technology gap for any of us sitting in this room. I barely have a degree. Barely. While I'm sitting next to a PhD, a brilliant man. But you have to charter your own path. I took the path of hands-on. I started I started running the tech route. But we end up right back next to each other. So there is no excuse. I had to drop out twice because I had to take care of my family. No excuse. grew up maybe like all of us. We still no longer a story anymore, and we had a single parent home. Have most of us between the 70s and many of us. So now at this stage, that you are now getting knowledge, and I'm going to be here more often with you, because we need to get this stuff to you and let you know what's available. It is no longer you wake up, you brush your teeth, you comb your hair, you put on clothes, you go to class, you go out with your friends, you hang out, you sit on the phone all day. That is money and time. While I'm watching kids in India, Sri Lanka, and some of those places who are 5 years old, who have Raspberry Pi, and they've learned how to build their first Internet of Things, interactive, connected, little small car. 5 years old. So I am encouraging all of you today, as we continue to kind of go through this, you are a walking monetizable asset who is brilliant. I don't see a notepad in some of your hands, and I don't see a pen. You should never go anywhere without a pen and a notepad and capture knowledge. You deserve it. So now we can have a conversation. You ready to get started?
Yeah.
Let's go. And I need some energy in a room of smiles or something. How do you learn without enthusiasm?
Right. And also, I want to go back to the young man's question that he talked about in terms of, he didn't say disruption, but we have disruptive technologies in terms of robots. And what jobs are they taking? Some jobs out there, they're actually the dirty jobs. And you didn't mention this, but in West Texas, we see a lot of this happening in terms of the oil companies. There are certain jobs that humans are not performing anymore, and the companies are available, and I think she makes a very good point. We have to look at some of these disruption as opportunities, and you get into that space and you can create a company for something. And that's something that we don't often teach. And I think we have to teach innovation and also entrepreneurship, regardless of what side of the campus you're on. If it's a social science space, but you have to look at opportunities. What are the solutions? And you have to come up with the solutions and come up and develop these apps that can make life better. But I want to go back to taxes, and you mentioned, I think it was Bill Gates in terms of taxes, and also you didn't say inequality, but how do you get into that space in terms of you look for job displacement and you try to close the growing income inequality, the gap, if you will. I think most of the correlation in the data would suggest certainly it's going to come back to politics in terms of people may be more apt to develop robots or to push it or drive that industry if it's geared towards warfare as opposed to taxing for the public good for people who are at the lower end of the social economic scale. And I think we'll see more of those kinds of debates taking place.
I agree.
In terms of, is it in the public interest? How do we deal with income inequality? It's easy to get a robot to clean the floor, for example. So if you're talking about people being displaced at the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. So we have to, as young people, have to have these kinds of thoughts and have a part of that. What do we do? What's in the interest of the public good? And I'm an old school political scientist. We go back to politics being about the authoritative allocation of values. What are the values? What are the values that would drive society? Is it for the public good? If it's in the interest of those people who cannot help themselves, then you may define your values as being liberal. But if you believe that the government which governs best, it may be driven towards a kind of wartime industry, for example, and you're willing to tax for those things. You're willing to drive artificial intelligence in order to protect for national security and public safety and these kinds of things. But there's another side out there. There's a growing gap. There's a schism that we see that's dividing between the haves and the have-nots. So we have to talk about that. Where do we factor into this equation?
So this is where I keep encouraging. We have options and choices when we wake up in the morning. This is a bi-directional problem. Companies will come back and say, I can't find people to build roles. They're right. But then what pathways are we creating and opening up for you to learn? But then I say there's a third wheel. Where's your motivation? Where's your motivation? Every day you wake up, where's your motivation? Knowledge is so available to you guys, way better than it was when we were in school. We didn't, we still had to go look up encyclopedia. We had to go to the library, check out books, and get. And then we got dinged when we didn't turn the books in, we couldn't graduate. I mean, there was a whole lot of stuff associated with those books. You guys have it freely. And I would ask each of you, if I were to ask a question, to say, how often do you do deep research? And the reason why I know the difference is because I have a lot of young people that will come to me who are hungry, doing whatever it takes, and we get them through the pipe. Y'all, it's not enough. Something is going on and it's not enough. So we have a couple of things. We have a true inequality problem that we've got to fix. But then in order to fix it, it means we've got to be at the table. And in order to be at the table, it means you've got to get motivated and demand more from folks like us so that I'm accountable to be here. Bringing other folks with us to say we are going to get you educated and knowledgeable, because it's going to come through, your knowledge will be multidimensional. It's going to come from many places. Come on up. You want to come up a little further? And so we do, and we are addressing, and we're pushing even ourselves, pushing to say, but then they're saying, okay, now we want to open it up, and then we don't have enough in the STEM tech pipeline. So now we got all the diversity and inclusion, we got all the tools, we have everybody ready, we got the data. The data at Microsoft, I don't have a problem sharing it with you, it's about 2%. It's low.
Right. And just to sum it up, what we're trying to do is the touchstones, the touch points, is to look at all the areas of public policy concerns, whether it's public health, and I think the last thing we talked about is the impact on the economy, and we hadn't even talked about the diversity piece in terms of where we are as a part of artificial intelligence, or the whole big data in terms of the decisions that are made and how people of color and people at the lower end of the economic totem pole are impacted. And so that's a whole new discussion. But as political science students and students of American government and Texas government, you have to think about the impact of these disruptive technologies on these public policy areas, and certainly it impacts people of color because we have a particular niche or a place in all of them, and we're impacted.
Imagine, yeah, go ahead.
I had a question, and my name is Joshua Span. At what point do you think that AI should plateau, like they should stop advancing? Because if they do keep advancing, they will end up taking all the jobs. Because I was reading I was watching this show on television, and for my job career, I want to be a pilot. I'm in aviation. There's 90,000 in the next 4 years, so when I graduate, there should be a job opportunity of about 90,000 more pilots. But that in contrast to that, there is AIs that are actually taking the jobs away from pilots. Becoming a pilot is like $100,000 job. So if you take 90,000 jobs away that's offering 6 figures or more, that's gonna become a problem for people that's actually trying to become a pilot and work that job.
These are good things to think about, but I will tell you this. So I also do a lot of work. We do a lot of mixed reality and AI work where we have simulations, and pilots, robots can never make, so first of all, the regulatory-wise, you have human lives at stake. I don't know a time ever that a regulatory body would enable all robots to control lives with big equipment, with failure, you have too much cognitive. So you're in a very special place. You have a lot of cognitive, and we can interact and have this conversation. you have a lot of cognitive decisions to make when there's turbulence, when there are all kinds of external conditions that they have to make. So I'd love to know from you, why do you think that you could completely eradicate the human from that experience of aviation?
And I'll just put this out there. I think if you look at the music industry, for example, and in terms of the changes that it has gone through in terms of how you make a record, for example, and we saw there was a point where Capitol Records or some of the other big industry giants, they controlled everything. But now you can drop a record, you take all of that out, all right? So I think what I'm hearing, and I think Trice is and again, it goes back to these disruptions that we see. What openings out there for new types of entrepreneurships in terms of what space will go into a person like a Jay-Z, for example, to impact on the economy, where we'll say 20 years ago, it would be one major industry or one record company would control everything. So I think what we're driving, what should be one of the major takeaways today, that there are opportunities out there when there seems to be disruptions or when there are adverse circumstances. So I think we have to change the mindset, or what we used to say would be a paradigm shift in terms of the way we look at things.
They already have something, well, going back to the aviation, they already have something called fly-by-wire, which means basically all the pilot does is steer from a certain perspective. They already have autopilot, and they've actually already tested drones that can fly themselves, that's used in military use.
And I know all of that, but we're a long way away. So your question about aviation and replacement, right, of bodies, what I'm telling you, you go off, continue to do what you're doing and stay focused. Don't get distracted by all the things that could happen. We're years and years and years off from, even in your generation, of seeing a complete, go ahead.
But I'm saying there's an interest, there's an industry for that. Look at the opposite impact. What if it were hacked? All right, how could your expertise as a human person create a job?
That's exactly right, yes.
Or something.
It's a very good point.
To prevent that. All right, and we see the same thing. We have a very large port here in Houston, and I think it was some researchers at the University of Texas. They hacked into how they could, it was a luxury boat or liner or something like that. But if you look at how that could disrupt shipping, or how it could disrupt flying an airplane, you could come up with something that would be a counter to that, and where you create your own business to do that. So that's the mindset, that you have to be entrepreneurial. I'm saying I don't define it as a problem if it doesn't impede progress.
And that's all I want to make sure you're spot on is, I want you to stay excited about your industry. Your industry is, the types of opportunities that are opening up in this space are limitless.
Yes.
So you may have an Uber plane. Do you understand my point? And it is coming, by the way.
Right now is they're trying to build a drone lift transportation type.
So I keep, and this is, so guys, listen, this is when I would, if you don't hear anything else from me today, I keep hearing they are, they. You have everything you need to be, I am a part of this. It is so easy to get distracted by everything going around you. Now, it used to be the sky's the limit. You can do anything, you can achieve. Now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to worry because robots may take my job. That's another distraction. And instead of Dr. Adams is saying, hey, great that all this, bring it on, robot. But now I want to channel my energy. Instead of saying they are drone, they are this, how can I, with my aviation experience, go off and create the next Uber drive, right? How can I create something that mechanics at the aviation, because you understand the landscape. So what other areas of efficiency and opportunity can you solve, and problems can you solve? See, robots are going to be here. They're not going away. And artificial intelligence, machine learning, cognitive, it's going to be here. We're here. So now what are you freed up to do? What is unlocked in your life to go off and be great at something adjacent that's going to solve a bigger problem. That is what I want to hear you do. Does that make sense? Because that's the level of motivation that I know is in you. Yeah? I know. Well, I think let's pass back because you've been, yeah, we'll pass back and then we'll come back. Yeah.
Sorry about my voice.
That's okay.
I have two things. One, your question when you asked what we could do to improve. What was your last question that you just asked him?
So instead of the distractions that we have that say we can't and robots are coming, we get all these worries. How do we rechannel that to tap into something great in you to say instead of they're coming up with these ideas, it is now you solving problems with your skills?
Well, my answer to that was you can possibly look for error and kind of point out all the little things that you notice that the mechanics don't do. That way that you can point that out to the people who are creating it so that they can add that into the next, or so it continues to advance. That way when you're flying the plane, I guess you can look at all the things that the robot's not doing and all the things that you notice that it's missing or what have you, things that can actually turn into an issue per se. Like I'm guessing if the robot's flying the plane, it's not doing all of it. So he said that you would have to steer every once in a while, and you mentioned turbulence. So I guess if the plane is not flying correctly when it hits turbulence or something, then you can point that out to the people who, I guess, invented the.
You know what you're describing?
Mechanic.
You know what you're describing?
What is it?
At the beginning, we talked about your power, data, and monetizing your knowledge. See, that's the place, and I'm going to later, if you go look up Robert F. Smith, billionaire under Oprah, I think there may be even level playing field. He's the second black billionaire. And he's coming out with a platform called Intern X. You may want to write it down. Intern X will roll out in January. Intern X is where you can go get it matched to a job, right, from anywhere all over the nation. They have big companies that are going to be signing up to this. And every time they look at your profile, you get paid $1. This is what he's done with your data. He's saying no one is going to download your data, look at your profile for nothing. Just like on Facebook, you have a lot of information, you take trips, you do well, you communicate, and people can see how you feel, they know your voice, they understand your platform for free. What he's saying is that every time a company is interested in you, they pay you $1 to look at you. That is what I'm talking about.
Also,
you're opening up new avenues because you guys have that platform, that ability. Go ahead.
All right. Also, what are we thinking about the Uber Air? Because I know that they've released that in Dubai, and I think that they're trying to get test runs in New York. And it's basically just, I guess, it's still Uber, but it's a drone that flies itself, and it comes and picks you up, and it's like set up just for the person to fit in and what have you, and it's basically like a mini helicopter.
Oh, I love it. Like I told you, I'm a lift person. So if I could bypass the air, but keep in mind, guys, listen, we have a lot of security. You know, you guys know when you go to the airport, FAA doesn't play. We are great that we're thinking about these things. And this is the level of thinking. This is why I'm so happy that you're bringing this stuff up, because this is the level of thinking you need to be. That's where you need to be. What are the implications? What are the implications in law and policy? How are they going to make it happen? You should be researching. Why? Because you will be able to knock on somebody's door and say, I have the perfect solution, and I want to be a part of your research team, even as a student here at TSU, and you create yourself an opportunity. That's the thinking that we're trying to elevate you to. Make sense? You're asking all the right questions. Yes, and I think you're...
I have more than two questions, but I got ask two for right now. Like, you think it ever become a time where, you see, like, let's just say you look at a man or a woman, and you ask your friend, hey, you think that's a man or a woman? Like, you can't tell the difference. So, like, you see, like, on the weather channels, the people already look fake. You think it ever become a time where you be like, you think that's a robot telling me this information or a human?
We already did it. So right now, if you come to our, we have a MTC here in Houston. And I'm going to see if they have it there. But we built a garage. We built it for Walmart. I think it's okay to share. And what it is you walk up. Walmart can tell based on, again, there's a whole thing on artificial intelligence on cognitive services. And in cognitive, there are these what we call application programmatic interfaces, or APIs, that we can plug in. And through the classification, remember I said dogs versus cats, there are attributes of a human being. There are DNA attributes. Now that gets quirky and tricky because we also have a world of our, transgender. We have all types of other things, but even that could be classified. Right? Because there are common attributes that they look at and that they study, and the machines can get smarter based on the classifications. So you walk up to this machine, and I walked up to it, and the closer I got, I could not believe. Now, it couldn't almost guess my age. It was 10 years off, but it guessed that I was a female, that I was 5 feet, and it showed you're a female, 5 feet, and then I could walk over somewhere and it told me what I was buying. That's how smart these companies are getting. And that's rolled out already. It's doing a demographic analysis so it can know, and it can determine personalization so it can send specific advertisement to your phone. Again, brilliant. You're thinking the right thoughts, right?
I have a question for you. She's say you, like other people saying they, and people like you, ready to, like, it's a challenge for you, right? But how you expect to outthink or outdo something that's programmed to be smarter and better than you?
But I think it all goes back.
What's your plan to become better than a robot?
Yeah, in the concepts, again, we have to deal with some basic concepts in order to communicate. It's called singularity in terms of where the robots will outthink the humans. But my position is still there's going to be some human factor involved in terms of the decision making. And so I can't really say the answer to that question at what point we would meet that threshold. But clearly, I think the controls, and looking at it from the standpoint of government, in terms of the factors, in terms of whether or not we allow certain things to do that. Those are government decisions. Those are human decisions in terms of what point do you go beyond. And I think in terms of controlling, we have to look at the role of government, and I'm sure you're getting this from these classes, in terms of public safety, national security, and you have to look at the public good. And I'll go back to the example I used earlier in terms of the driverless cars, for example. When we have cars running over people, now the National Transportation Safety Administration is going to have to stand in at some point. They have to step in and say that we cannot do it. That's something called the public good. And so government should be about the interest in terms of protecting the public good, national security, making sure that our boundaries and frontiers are protected from foreign invasion, public safety, for example, and it's the collective good. And those decisions, my position will be driven by human beings. Okay.
All right, I have a question. So I definitely understand like your sentiment about like when I guess there's a disruption, you find the opportunity in that disruption. But I don't know, I think one of the scary things about AI for me is when it comes to politics and like the greed of big business. So if like certain robots start to like, I guess, replace humans as far as, like working, I feel like a lot of like big businesses would try to like avoid paying those taxes or avoid like kicking back money to the citizens who have lost their jobs and try to keep all that to themselves,
My response would be, in terms of being a political scientist, those are the risks that you run in a capitalist society. In terms of that's capitalism, it's inbred. In terms of to be a kind of it's the last frontier. You go beyond that to build and to expand businesses, and you create opportunities for people. But the role of the government in terms of how they define their role, in terms of how do you rein that in? What are the protocols? What are the checks and balances that are put on that in terms of how far do you go? And then we can go back to taxes, and for example, in terms of do you tax or do you come up with the regulations? And if you look at in terms of big business, for example, they they will support one political party because, again, it's an anti-regulatory kind of party, and it's a kind of unfettered access to capitalism, and so these are the kinds of things. But again, it's a human decision, and I think if you look at the impact that it would have on people and governors, and I'll just throw something out, and this was a kind of hair-brained thing I was reading. I don't know if you read this article in terms of over in Japan. There was a politician, I think 2 years ago. He said that he was just going to eliminate all politicians, and he would just use data to drive decisions and make public policy decisions. So that wouldn't be, there wouldn't be any need for a Congress or these kinds of things. So I don't know, but those are the risks and the perils of capitalism when you look out there, and certainly, and I used the example of the robot that shot the person in Dallas 2 years ago. That was a Northrop Grumman, I think, made robot. And so again, if there's a space, and that's the frontier of capitalism and the expansion of capitalism in terms of being able to get into that. And I think that's what we're saying, not that we are encouraging you to be budding capitalists or these kinds of things and not think about the social consequences of your actions. But that's the role of government, to look in and to try to check. And it's just like with any industrial revolution. So there has to be some guidelines of some text.
Now I want to separate AI from robots, machines that are intelligent. You use AI every day. Your iPhone, who has iPhone or other kind of phone, whatever phone you have, there's AI built all the way through it. So when you start to type something and it fills in your word for you, that's intelligence, right? It learned. That's part of that is cognitive or machine learning, running behind the scene. When you say hello Siri or hello Alexa, Alexa is a cognitively intelligent. It has a whole natural language, all the things I'm talking about now. So you guys use AI every single day. So separate that from what we call super intelligent robots or machines. And what you're talking about and what you've spoken about are machines that are super intelligent. And that's a whole separate kind of conversation.
Yeah, and we have talked about the digital assistants, and that's where Siri and some of these other things. And that could be used for a lot of good. In terms of the older I get, I think about geriatrics, for example. You can talk into a machine, and it can remind you whether or not you've taken your medication for that day. And the older you get, and certainly we've seen the set in of Alzheimer's and some of the other things, so you can forget. So it's not all bad when we talk about artificial intelligence. And I think Trice and I, we were having a conversation last week about public health. You can go to the doctor in a matter of minutes. You can get a diagnosis. Also, we can talk about looking at the reams of data that could be put in from medical journals in terms of scientific journals, and where it would take teams of doctors for many years to come up and do a diagnosis. And even, we haven't talked about a mammogram, for example, but we have now machines can make these decisions almost in real time, and it speeds up the diagnosis, and we lead to better health and to better care. And look at the apps on your phones in terms of the activities. I just happen to walk 3 miles every day back and forth to work. But that's health. Whether I take the stairs at work and everything is built in, and I can just look on my iPhone and I can get my activity listed for that day. So it's not all bad, and we have to think about what's in the good of the public good, again, the public health. And again, we don't talk about prevention, and that's very important as well. And I think that AI is getting into that sphere and that arena as well.
That's right.
That space.
That's right, Dr. Adams.
Yeah.
Right now, I feel like we are in the age of computer assistance, but in the future, we'll be in the age of more AI. So there can only be so many programmers and so many lawmakers that are controlling what AIs can do. And that's where it gets iffy on the job situation, because eventually in the future it will start taking more and more jobs. And what you was talking about for technology and the turbulence and stuff like that, the technology is actually already there. It's already being created. It's just that humans don't trust robots with mass transportation. That's the only reason we have not, and besides money, like you said, being capitalist and capitalist government, that's the only reason why it has not moved over yet.
We haven't solved, so I'll tell you, we haven't begun to tap into the power of where we're about to go with the whole aviation industry. And I'm being serious. We're seeing things at NASA that are insanely amazing that haven't been released yet.
Right.
We haven't even begun to touch. This is why I said we got to be very careful, because I don't even think we couldn't predict where we are 10 years ago that we'd be sitting in this place even having these kinds of conversations with you.
Right.
And we haven't even begun to tap into what's possible. And this is where I encourage all of us to really start to do some deep thinking and do research and get knowledge so that you can start to predict what things are coming. We haven't touched the surface of where we're getting ready to go, my friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But he mentioned a good, you talked about the future, but I think the future is you have to view it from your perch. What does it mean? We haven't even morphed into a discussion of education and what that means in terms of how do you prepare for the future in terms of what these jobs. And I think from where I sit in terms of higher education, we have to look at curricular changes in terms of how that's going to impact, in terms of looking at smart classroom, produce smart people, and we have to, all this comes to bear. Where are we in terms of looking at what you're taking right now, what other people are taking at other universities, and how do you prepare for the future? And so that has to be a part of the discussion. If I were you, my future would be in my hands in terms of the way I see it and through those lenses in terms of how I'm viewing it. And it would drive the discussion if I see something that's not being offered on this campus in terms of course offerings, in terms of a certificate, in terms of GIS or these kinds of things. This is where the jobs are. They're not going to be the old brick and mortar kinds of things. They're driven by technology, and you're seeing it from aviation science. You're in this sphere, so you should be able to drive what's being offered in your department when you talk to your professors and see what other people, other programs, what they're doing. And I guarantee you their simulations may be far advanced than what you're having, and you may be using old technology, old equipment. So what's happening at the University of Washington? What are some of the partnerships that we hope we'll make today with Microsoft that we can bring these things home? So that's a selfish.
Well, and it's interesting because my next thing is you have all of this great, and let me tell you, every question that you're asking, you should be. And it's spot on. I'm so impressed, by the way. Do you have a mentor in aviation research from somewhere like MIT who are thinking ahead, from a NASA? If not, that's where I challenge you to go next. That's where you're going to birth your next internship from and your next big opportunity. Because you have a lot, and this is why I said, I want to take everything you're saying and change it around for opportunity.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because you're, again, very impressive.
Good. Right. But also, and I think the civics lesson here today, and I think all of us, we're citizens, we're voters, and I think we should drive the conversation, whether it's in Austin or whether it's in Washington, D.C., or whether it's at City Hall. What is the mayor's innovation office doing? What is the outreach program? How are they tapping in terms of the use of these apps? And I can go on and on because I'm familiar with government, and I know from crime stats in Baltimore, from ComStats in New York City, a lot of decisions are being driven by apps. The city of Boston have an app called Street Bump, for example. It's based upon acceleration. You can check where a pothole is. So all of these things, government is changing today, public policy. So we as students and as citizens, we need to be at the point where the decisions are made. It's opportunities out there for you to create and to become a part of this innovation. And that's my takeaway from this conversation.
I love it. I love it. Anyone else? Because I know that we're going to definitely come to you. Oh, no. You can ask as many questions as you want. I want everybody to be thinking of how to interact and what's on your, I would love to get what's on your minds as well. Is that fair? Yeah? Can everybody just ask at least one question? Yeah?
This is more like a realization, I guess, not a question per se. There might be a question. I feel like the fear is coming from, like, the fear in the citizens is coming from mainly the fact that everything's hands-free, and the difference between normal technology and artificial intelligence, because cell phones, when they first came out, they were basically just a brick that stored things. So they would store your pictures and store your numbers and then call whenever you chose to call. And now they've got cell phones where you can click on your phone and it opens just because of your face, and you can talk into it and it'll type out your text messages and what have you. So I feel like that's where the fear comes, because you said that there's a difference between super intelligence and, I guess, just AI. So I feel like once the super intelligent robots start being able to do things that require us to be hands-free or not involved whatsoever, that's where the fear comes.
What's interesting, so you just described my world. I'm over mixed reality. That's the business architecture practice that I lead. And so my world is all about heads up, hands free. We have, if you've never seen HoloLens, you can go take a look at it later. HoloLens, it's called mixed reality. It's not VR technology. It is extended reality technology. So you can imagine being a mechanic in a big turbine, and then instead of having to open up a manual to try to figure out how to fix a big part, instead of knowing where your inventory is, picking up the phone, calling the control room to say, is the part available? Basically, it is a 3D image of every single, the part explodes out, and it will tell you this part is in inventory because it's pulling data from all of these systems to give it all to you, and superimposes that data the way that you would see it on a Pokemon Go. Yes, that is what we want. Why? Because it keeps that person safe. That company now doesn't have to fly in a person that they normally used to, because you can hollow port people. Physicians is one place. And when we come back, we'll be able to show you more of this. But you can hollow port a physician to where a physician is sitting right here where I'm sitting, put on his HoloLens. Patient in another country can put on their HoloLens. And then you see imagery, whether it's X-rays, whether it's whatever that looks like. You're all in one single environment, talking to each other one-to-one. That future is here now. Hands up, heads free, all mobile-enabled technology. And they're going to go further with that. So I just want you guys not to be afraid, because I have a job because of that. And so there are other jobs now being birthed. And that's what Dr. Adams keeps saying, is you got to look at the other things.
And we haven't even broached the subject of cybersecurity. And I think that's a whole new industry that we've talked about, some of the fears that you may have in terms of things being hacked in. And we know that our monies are being managed in terms of things are being locked, and people can hack into it and just empty a vault and what have you. So that's a whole new industry. So that's what are we doing in terms of majors? And that's something that we should be doing here in terms of looking at cybersecurity, as a field that we can go into. So again, it's disruptive technology, but also again, it presents a lot of opportunities for us.
I'm going to say something because I want to make sure.
No, I was wondering if you wanted to take a break now. We've been going for an hour. Do you want to show the video
yes.
and come back?
Do you guys actually, I could prepare a few of these videos and put them back to back so you guys can see the world in real time. What do you want to do? We could take a quick break, Dr. Adams. So, and then we can come back with more questions. Is this keeping you interested, awake? Are you learning, or do you guys want to do the videos? It's up to you. Would that help?
Let's see the video.
That's one more question.
Okay. Are y'all okay? I'm good.
We can show the video and just go through it.
You guys want to keep asking questions for a few more minutes? Because it sounds like you still want to keep
They're
going.
excited. That's interesting.
I'm happy. Yeah.
I just have to ask you about this.
Yeah.
It's about digitizing, it's about robotics.
Let's give her the mic real quick, Margaret. Miss Margaret.
What they're doing in China, where they're identifying people like on the streets, where they can watch your movement all day long or whatever. Are you familiar with that? It's
So
scary to me.
we can
Big
do
brother
that.
watching.
We can do that almost here. So they're counterterrorism. It's all about counterterrorism, and there are places I probably can't name yet because some of those are under confidentiality. But there are cities that you can go to today who have been where terrorist acts have taken place. What happens is they leverage what's called biometrics and cognitive. We keep kind of going back to the way that you can do facial recognition.
Right.
And so then they could tap that into databases to see, so then it all becomes data, like you said, it's digitization of data where they're looking at every database. The other thing that it could do is, we haven't even touched the IoT yet, Internet of Things, which is the mayor's big initiative here. That's why we keep saying there's so many opportunities for all of you. But the Internet of Things allows us that when even you detect a person and they have a bag, we can see content of things and sense things. So there are radar. So you think about radiation, and think about the ability to be able to sense a bomb in somebody's bag when they pass the camera. So not only can you detect something, you can also detect some things coming out that are not natural to the environment. So now you have a whole nother big opportunity. So this isn't just happening in China. I could name a couple of big cities.
You know, I think that's great in terms of detecting terrorists, whatever. I love it. But in terms of catching me without my makeup one morning, I don't like that. It just seems like it's such an invasion of your privacy, though. You know what I'm saying?
It goes back to privacy, that this is exactly what Dr. Adams said. While I'm excited that I'm going to be safe, that I don't do anything wrong.
Exactly.
But now they have it even where you can shoot a gun, and it will know through the cognitive capability, gunshots, it knows exactly where the shot came from. And you can now get the perpetrator in seconds when normally you couldn't do it. So I, as a citizen, I don't care if they detect me, I feel safer, but others are, this is exactly what Dr. Adams keeps saying. This is the big debate.
My daughter and I were talking
privacy.
about this the other day, and I know everybody experiences this, but I'm not tech savvy, Dr. Adams.
But you're doing good.
But, you know, she and I were talking about this. You can go on your computer and maybe you just look up a word or whatever. Let's say if I look up haute couture, you know, the high-end designs, whatever, then within seconds, I've got all these ads from Christian Dior, Valentino, who I cannot afford, you know. But just because I entered haute couture, then here comes all of the multi-million-dollar designer. It just seems like we're just with all this technology, we're losing something as we embrace it, as we go. Mostly we're losing. I don't want anybody in my mind, in my head, telling me, oh, this is who you need to be shopping with.
Now that gets into another discussion, because again, in marketing, and I just know that from personal experiences, in terms of your place, in terms of how you get to be on Google and whatever, and there's a whole debate out there in terms of monopoly of the types of ads in the stores. They know your spending habits, your trends, and stuff like that. So that's, again, it goes back to capitalism, and that's the market that's driving a lot of that. But the other question in terms of is Big Brother, in terms of they're watching, and again, is it for good or bad? But we live in an era, I think, in terms of national security concerns, in terms of public safety. And you can imagine some of the larger cities that, you know, that we have vulnerabilities here. We have a very large port, and certainly there are people out there all the time looking to do bad or to do evil.
Yeah, I think
but again, cybersecurity gets into, again, going back to the aviation, the student. I'm really impressed with your interest, and I think that should drive a lot of other decisions. And some of these other things I'm just throwing out there, and I know in terms of education and our speed, in terms of higher education, there's some things that we should be offering that we're not offering, but it prepares us for the future. So that shouldn't be, we don't want the takeaway today to be that all of the jobs are going to be displaced and what are the robots are doing in artificial intelligence. But it's to make society much better. But again, we should be at the point where the decisions are made. We should drive the coding. We should be a part of the discussions. I look at commissions that are out there. They include everybody, but they don't include people of color. Like we're not out there, but these are the people who are going to be driving the regulations, doing the studies that Congress are going to read, that will have the input in terms of becoming public policy decisions. We should always think about being at the point where the decisions are made, right? And again, you're all people, the politicians. I feel that I'm always loved around election time. I get all of these calls, people, they're asking me to vote and whatever.
Yes.
But when it comes time to listen to problems in terms of public policy decisions, you know, they only come back when the elections are there, and then they forget about us. As good citizens, and I think the civic lessons today is to always to have your input, have your voices heard, and AI is very important. Big data is driving a lot of things, from your public safety, just from potholes and everything. City government is being run by that. And I don't want to forget today, but I want to throw out data.gov. It's just everything is up online from the federal government. The state of Texas will have a data portal. Just about everything that will impact your lives from a state point of view, whether this license or something that you need to know in terms of just doing research. The city of Houston has a data portal. They collect data and information on just about everything. So as students, and I'm always a student, so you never stop learning about things. There are always opportunities. And so that's the mindset that I try to get the student body to think about at Texas Southern University.
You're spot on, and Margaret raised the best point, because that's the dilemma. That you now are a digital copy of your behavior,
Yes.
a digital copy of the way that you move throughout your moment, and the moment you make a move that you just have curiosity, then they make that curiosity who you are to your core. Think about the power now of leveraging that same platform for segmentation and framing a political landscape. It gets even more interesting. I want to say scary, because now they're able to segment and say, because you like these things, because you do these things, I now can come in and I want to draft a bill that likely you're going to support, because I've been watching and I paid somebody for your data. I paid someone. That goes back to the company, Cambridge, that Analytica, that's at the center of a lot of controversy now. And guys, there may not be a pure solution to all that you are seeing, but what you look at is you say, if someone has a price and they're paying a price, why not set up a site or some app that now, every time somebody gets some information about you or they look you up, that you're the one getting something out of the... See, I don't have a problem with my data. As long as it's not my social's probably out there. Probably everything is out there, guys, by the way. I probably don't have a big problem with people knowing what I do, what I like, and my behaviors. Because then a lot of personalization comes, so you get a lot out of it, right? By a lot of good. The danger comes is exactly what you're saying, is machines don't have any logic, so you can click the one ad. You can make a mistake, and then they assign that to your identity. How do we resolve those challenges and get Yahoo on board and others on board to say, can I have an end capability that when I put something out there, or when I click something, that I have a control panel where I can determine who I am and who I want others to know who I am? I don't know if anybody has created that yet, or if they've gone to some of these social media platforms to say, I want to reinvent myself from who I was 3 or 4 years ago. Yes. Yeah. You can take, no. This is an interactive. Yeah, this is highly interactive.
I actually just redid all my social media because I'm trying to get my portfolio started for my modeling career. So that's why I was like, that's
Very
me.
good.
But I wanted to bring up this. I forgot which country it is where they started implementing this, but they're doing this microchip where they put it in people's hands, and it's mainly for people of offices so that they can get into padlocked doors and what have you, like all the security locked doors. You would have a chip in your hand per se, to where you can access everything that you would have a security code to. So that being said, I also heard about AI being put in humans for like advancement. This is like way on into the future, I'm guessing, but I'm guessing since they're considering putting AI, I guess, advancing us, so adding artificial intelligence to our current brain. That way we would have all the data information as well as our emotions and psychological thoughts. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that, and if that was ever going to be a thing, because they're already comfortable with putting technology in people with the microchips. So I was just trying to see what y'all thought about that, if we would ever have to advance as a human race due to how advanced our robots become.
I definitely don't have enough information about AI inside of the human brain to
augment and make the brain even more powerfully intelligent. And I'm not even sure how I feel about that. I think we're all about getting more knowledge, more information. I think that, again, it goes back to everything you were saying is purpose. What is the purpose, having a purpose for all of that, right? And what's the purpose in achieving that? And I would like to know more about how it's being done, because, yeah, I would like to know how.
I feel like it would almost eliminate education, because having a system inside you that constantly.
I'll have to read up on that to see how they're achieving that.
Right.
Like what mechanism?
I do know that the microchips are already in effect, though. That they have been putting those in people. I don't remember which country it is. Right. It might be Dubai, because Dubai has everything early, but I've noticed that they're comfortable putting technology in people already. So if it was possible to advance human beings, if our robots become
I've seen the
too advanced.
microchips, and I've seen all of those, but as far as being able to impact the brain, which is a very sensitive area, I'd love to know more about how they're able to impact the brain.
Right. I know that they're considering it. I don't know if they're
No, but this
able to
is
do it
good,
yet.
because you're educating. Again, this is bidirectional. I appreciate this so much, yeah, because it gives us.
Yeah.
With that, I see where he coming from, because they give you two options. It's either to put it in your hand or put it in your head.
Yeah, but as far as it propelling or infusing greater intelligence coming from where, you got to remember, intelligence has to have information, which means that the chip has to be connected somehow to a Wi-Fi, to a cloud, to something to get the data. So I would have to learn more and understand, because you can't get data offline without it. Yeah, go ahead.
Like with that chip, it know when you born. It know your
basically.
bank statements. It know the last thing you bought. It know everything about you.
So we would have to, yeah, I'd have to do some more investigation. I think that's pretty unique.
But I have a question. Like, they have like the artificial intelligence. They have like this technology where it could actually print food. Like you type in whatever you want and it print it out. And like, let's just say you in the fast food business. Like if you have a robot out there that could print food, or you have a robot out there who will take your job in pharmacy, mixing medicine and stuff like that. If you in this field, if you in the, let's just say the small food businesses or the small pharmacists, like you there saying stay hungry and stay motivated and stuff like that. Like if you know artificial intelligence could print food and they about to knock out your small business, and you in the pharmacy business, and you know like artificial intelligence on there mix, all you gotta do is press a button and it mix the medicine for you. Like how would you stay motivated and stay hungry knowing that a robot out there completely wipe out your job?
Yeah, but my response again, but those would be decisions made by the government in terms of if it's a staple crop, if it's agriculture, for example, and you're going to lay off an industry or something like that. And I'm sure that the government would be somewhat careful to enter into a foray of eliminating a crop. But again, to make life safer, to make life better, we hadn't touched upon globalization and the impact of that. We haven't talked about emergency. We have a program in our school called Emergency Management, Homeland Security, for example. And I think back to Katrina in terms of when everybody didn't have a cell phone and they weren't able to get out and they wouldn't get that now. And I was down in Brazil about a week ago in terms of the use of drones for crowd control and these kinds of things. So the technology is there, but some of the things, inputting chips and what have you, we do have a system of laws, Margaret, in terms of public debate, in terms of civil liberties, in terms of protecting that. How far would you go? And I think in the public domain, in terms of the discussion, that would be. And I think as Americans, we're not as autocratic in terms of saying these kinds of things. So certainly that would be pushed up. That's still an arena in terms of where the free flow of ideas, in terms of public policy is debated. There are courts, there are laws, and the government again should operate in the interest of the public good, does it impact on the public good? Do you give your privacy away for these types of civil libertarian protections, for example, to be coded or to put something in your brain? And again, I believe that the singularity revolution is coming in terms of where we have these smart machines and everything like that. But still, you have to look at in terms of how government works and how it all.
And HIPAA and all those are still, so we're a ways away. That's all I'm going to tell you, we're a ways away. Stay focused and stay excited. We are a ways away. We have a lot to figure out before a robot could just get somebody's medicine. They have to be able to get through a whole host of systems. They have to be able to, physicians that have how do you know the signature from a real physician? There's a lot that has to happen before you can even start filling medication. There's a whole validating insurance. So this is why I say knowledge.
Yeah.
Look at the full value chain.
Exactly.
Look at the entire cycle of everything you're asking and say, what is it going to take in order to realize this and make it real? Those are the questions. You know why? Because you may birth a business out of this and say, you know, I'm going to deal with this discrete part of the value chain because of what I know is coming down the pipeline, and I'm going to start a company that's going to go off and do this. That's the level of thinking. Because here's what I don't want to see happen anymore, and I hope we make an agreement before we leave here today. Yes, technology is coming, and yes, it may replace things, and yes, it will transform our lives. But you've asked good questions about what policies need to be in place in order to realize and make it true, and then get rid of the fear. That's the key, is get rid of the fear. Embrace it.
And I was going to say, we have to think of it in terms of being forces of good. You know, what about eliminating world hunger, famine, these kinds of things if you use these technologies? And that's the lens I would look at it.
Artificial intelligence, and they have been scan, let's just say it's a historical building and it's no longer available. Like it would scan the building and it would show them how the building's supposed to be.
That's exactly right, and those are the things you look at. And then you think about augmented reality, 3D technology, that then can take all the contents of a building. It would even know, the drone could know the construction site, what materials are at the site, do you need inventory? And then a conversational back-end platform, the bot, could go off and say, okay, this person's going to run out of this inventory in this time. And now you can build a construction site much faster. So this is, what we keep saying is there's good, but then we need to mine the things that are important as far as the ethics and governance, which I love that you keep bringing governance back into this.
I hear you saying don't really worry about it and stay open, but this is going to happen in our near future. Like,
am I saying don't worry?
Well, you're saying that keep your eyes open and be excited, but this is going to happen in our near future, where it's possible that we could only have 3 types of jobs working. That would be big business, which would probably be the higher class. Middle class would probably be coders and programmers and things of that nature. And then it would be a lower class of people who have no jobs because there are no jobs left.
But I'll tell you this, so my friend, listen, we have that problem today. We have a class of people that I pass them every day that are struggling now. So here's what I encourage. And I think this is what I'm saying more than anything. You guys have an opportunity with all this knowledge that you have in your hand to either look at what's happening with glass full or glass empty. It's a choice. I don't know if I agree that there are going to be 3 classes. I think what we're seeing is we're seeing jobs that are exploding, that are coming open, that many people can't even fill by the time we get to 2030 and 2040 and 2050. And there's a huge gap to go after. And I think that is probably what I'm saying most. I'm probably saying not to worry. Number one, worry is not going to fix anything, number one. It never does. In my lifetime, I don't know. Not telling you not that you have some concerns in the back of your head. What we're challenging you to do is translate your fears into positive action for your life, for your family, and for your community. Guys, listen, this is a conditioning problem that we have. beyond everything else, you get up, you go to class every day, you do what the things that you're doing to live your life. If we don't mentally start to recondition our minds, that instead of seeing things as it's either the end of the world or things happening, we're going to get, but you have to reset your perspective and get context and get knowledge, research, and then understand your role. And once you do that, when I come back next time, I guarantee I'm going to hear another set of questions from you guys, because it's not about not worrying. It's about translating each and everything in your capability that you have into what's possible. And if you start every time that doubt kicks in and you say, oh, robots could replace, then you turn around and say, what am I going to do about it in the realm of my capability? And how is it that I can reset a new trajectory? And that level of interaction, we got to have that more often than all the fear. Does that make sense what I'm saying? A little bit. Because I don't want to smush what you're saying or shrink it down. It's important, but I want to show you a new perspective of innovation. Innovation doesn't live here in this place. Purpose does not live in fear. For you to realize your greatest potential and your purpose, you've got to stand up to whatever is in your head telling you something different, and then you got to face it and say, today you may be telling me that there might be AI, robotics, and all these things that might replace, but I'm going to stand here and tell you what I'm going to do about it, which means that instead of you focused on that distraction, you open up your life and your mind to unlock something much greater in you, so that you can deep think for solutions. That's where we want you to be. Yep.
Can I have ask a question real quick? So basically, I want to know what's happened in like the past year that has, I guess some sort of opportunity that you feel that has developed within the past year as far as like AI. And then also another question is, what do you think we can do as far as, like, say we aren't as tech savvy, like what do you think we can start to do now to like position ourselves, I guess, so we can be involved in this AI world, in this augmentative reality world?
You've got to get connected and mentor. Go ahead. Yes. Go right ahead.
I would like to take
Yes.
a shot at that one by starting from what we should do in terms of, I think, one, we should look at ourselves where we are globally in terms of education and what other societies are doing, and also looking at our industries in terms of how rapidly we're changing in terms of, we look at the electrification of cars, for example, as you know, we went from these big old heavy battery type cars and getting them charged, but now we look in some of the Nordic countries, they have rails and that can charge the cars, and where we are, what positions we're in terms of, because we have to talk about global competition. And because they're looking at, I think their benchmark in the year 2035 by saying that their economies will double. Where does that leave us in terms of Americans, and what does it portend in terms of what we allocate for public education, and looking at, and I go back to the concept in terms of smart classrooms, create smart people and these kinds of things. So we have to make investments if we're going to be competitive. And it's not all about us in terms of these individualized fears that we have. We have to think, and the reason why I think about government, because again, I'm a political scientist by training and I understand the roles of government, we have to talk about the public good, because I can't sit over here in a gated community and have all minds and think that I'm gonna ride out freely and not get knocked in the head or jacked, because if I'm neglecting others in our society. So we have to look at the best interests of the public good in terms of these kinds of things. So I would look at globally where we are, and how far are we improving in terms of education, looking at the commitment in terms of elementary, secondary education, K through 12, we're losing out, we're losing people. If we're not educating them, there's a prison pipeline, for example. So we have to talk about training. How do we retool? We cannot just write ourselves off or out of the game in terms of losers. How do we get back into the game in terms of how do we understand what we need to do to improve upon our communities? All right, and I think the mayor, he calls them complete communities, and how do we make ourselves whole? and looking at AI and look at other types of technologies where we can train people from warehouse jobs to other types of moving things and different types of mobility and transportation is another whole avenue.
And Dr. Adams is right, and I'll say this, guys. You have to go where all of this lives. You have to connect yourself to people who are in it every day, and then connect yourself to people who are knowledgeable about every single area that it's going to impact us. I keep asking the same question: who is your mentor? Because your mentor is going to pick up the phone, you'll have a call with that person, you'll interact with that person and say, I'm a photographer. Here are the things that I do best. And I'm going to ask questions, or your mentor is going to ask questions and say, do you have all of your work online? If you don't have all your work online, are you using tools where people can reach you? And are you using tools where you can segment people that need you? Do you have a brand? Do you have a plan to go after the market? Are you leveraging all of the tools and capabilities around you so that you can stand up a site so people can interact with new ways of working? Are you connected to a developer community? Are you down at WeWork? Are you down at the Startup Accelerator downtown that stood up? And are you working with other entrepreneurs that are developers and making friends? Are you extending your network, or are you around the same people every day doing the same thing every single moment of your life? You have to change. And that is the number one thing that I say. I hopped on the plane 2 weeks ago because I said I want to meet an individual. I wanted to meet the billionaire myself. I found a ticket, found a way, pressed on, hopped on a flight, and then made my way up to him to say, I just need 5 minutes of your time. He couldn't give it to me. That's like walking up to Oprah to do the same thing. Won't happen. But if you don't go meet purpose where it is, and if you don't take the time to look at the assets around you and then connect, my email box probably should be a little full from people saying, I need 20 minutes of your time to innovate. I have an idea. I want an opportunity. I'm ready to get out of this mind rut that I've been in because people keep telling me no, that I can't do this. And you need to be around people that are going to tell you your potential is limitless. No different than what we've been saying here. But then you have to put it to action. Nothing is going to come to you. Nothing. And so if you're ready to change and you're ready to take advantage and exploit, it's not just about artificial intelligence. There is a whole nother world out here. We haven't even approached blockchain. We haven't even approached digital twin, where we're able to take digital replica of assets of the world and be able to drive information and data right at the edge, where I can take an asset that's not smart at all, like a refrigerator, and then I'll know based on a barcode and information, custom vision, where you are with your milk. I can actually understand if your milk is almost out, report back to the Costco and say that he's going to be in to buy milk probably in the next 2 days because he has 6 kids and they need milk. They probably need about 3 or 4 gallons. And I can take that all the way back to the cow that produced it. This is the world we live in. And if you think that you don't have a place and a role, mechanical engineering, all of that, 100% everyone in this room has a role in an entire digital ecosystem. The key is you've got to surround yourself with mentors, with sponsors who are working in this space. You have a host of companies here, and you've got to get out of your shell, because we will all help you and people will help you. But you got to daggone well be motivated to come out of your shell and help yourself and come to people with positivity, a good heart. I will tell you that it wasn't until I really started to understand the world in a different way and have compassion and empathy and care, technology was meaningless. Because now I can solve problems, accessibility, you know, a lot of the things you keep talking about with governance, you've got to be able to see. And to see, you have to have a good heart. So you've got to get rid of a lot of the distractions, the negativity, be a kind person and a good person. And I'm telling you, you will attract beautiful people. That is what has changed my career over these last 7 years. It's just being good. Walking up to people and say, hey, can you help me? Because I want to see what you see. I no longer want to see the world the way I see it. Because if I woke up every day and saw that world, you wouldn't have me sitting here. If I feared, I fear nothing. And that's the level of capability and heart and grit that you have to walk up to every day.
Does that make sense?
Makes a whole lot of sense, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's like sometimes we have this trepidation with this fear of failure, and you cannot be there in terms of given the nature of innovation and the movement in our society. And you didn't say it, but we have to be able to adapt to a sharing economy. We have to be able to adapt to a gig economy. The world is changing, and you should ask yourselves in every class that you're taking, and also what are your majors in terms of how is this impacting on AI. So am I being prepared for the future in terms of these jobs? If you're just going to write yourself off, you're not going to succeed. And again, it's called disruption for a reason. And so there should be some benefits in having these disruptive technologies. You have to think a little different. It has to be, again, going back to the old canard in terms of a paradigm shift in terms of your level of thinking and how you approach these.
That's right.
I'm not writing myself off, but I'm more concerned of what would be available for me, because as technology advances, there's less need for me in my certain field. So
And I
really
hate to, and I don't interrupt, I apologize. I'm so sorry to have to do that, to interrupt. But it is with love that I tell you, I don't agree. I think that the limit for you is limitless. It's your eyes. You have to see. So whatever information you're getting, I would like to partner you with an aviation research person who's going to show you a new pair of eyes. You got to be able to see, young man, and see the world the way it will be and not what you're reading. There's the potential. If I could never have saw myself in a role like this, and it's limitless. And now I'm moving, going, but I want to bring everybody else with me. But to do that, it means that you have to take off the cap, that you're capping yourself, and because you can't see. Does that make sense? And this is out of love, because I hear you. Yeah.
And I hear you as well, but you have to look at things a little differently in terms of you have to prepare yourself, and education never stops. It's an ongoing process. It's a continuation. You have to put yourself in that space. If you need a certification in something to improve upon that, you do that. But also, you have to look at things in terms of a team, and I don't have I can hire a good person to work with me. If I see somebody, I don't have a problem working with people who are smarter than I am. If I'm a good manager, I know that I have to tap that talent to be able to succeed in order to be able to sustain my company and make sure that it grows. Right? So it's just, I think about things a little different.
Let me say this. Josh is one of my students, and he is totally cerebral all the time. And so I know that he's gonna take what you're saying, and it's going to filter down for him later. But I see what's going on here.
But he's asking very good questions. So there's no pushback. And Trice said it's out of love, and we have a genuine concern too. If we don't ask the hard questions as students in terms of faculty, how are we being prepared? Now, if you're in aviation science, your instructors should be challenged. How they innovate, how they update the curriculum, all right, in terms of to be able to meet with the market demands and how you see the future, in terms of that should be a part of the discussion that drives things, all right? I'm open-minded. I learn from my students, a lot of things in terms of technology, and that's the way you grow them. I keep saying, push them, young man.
And smarts here and here, they have to connect.
To follow up on what you were trying to tell them about, I hear them asking, okay, particularly Josh, like, what can I do? I had a situation where I was calling the roll last year, which was my first year here as an adjunct. And because our student body is so diverse, culturally and ethnically, there were tons of names that I could not pronounce, okay? So, and I had a class of about 100 students. So it was taking very long to go through the classroom. And then I had a student in computer science that came up to me later and said, Dr. Sherrod, I think we have something for you. I said, really? He said, yeah, some buddies of mine who are also computer science students, we're working on an app where students can take a password. You give them a password at the beginning of the class. You're familiar with this, Dr. Adams. I give them a password. They enter the password on their app, on their phone, and then that registers them as present that day. and I didn't have to. See, he has the app on his phone.
Roll call.
It's every day, so it's roll call, and so there's a rolling password daily.
Right.
And so each day the password changes.
Right.
That's
and
awesome.
The students got so excited about it, they were even asking, Dr. Sherrod, can I get a password today?
Amazing.
And it was amazing.
So in that, someone solved a problem.
And it was a student. You know,
This is amazing to me. 'Cause
Dr.
that's where we're
was my
at.
mentor. Yeah, and it's an example, exactly what you're talking about.
It's amazing.
But I'll say this to Josh, and I tell the students all the time, you know, you have to think of things in terms of collaboration and working with other people. And there's also always use make a friend before you need a friend. And I'm in government. I know a lot of people who work for the city, and I guarantee you I can pick up a phone and put you in contact through the mayor's office with somebody who's out at the airport where you can see these things in real time, where you don't have to read about them. And I know you may have an internship program, but again, you know, I'm just a college professor if I don't make the necessary connections for my students to be able to put them in the right place so that they can be able to see the changing world around them. So again, make a friend before you need a friend, collaboration, and meet good people. And that's why I have Trice here on campus today, and I reached out immediately. As you can tell, it was almost in real time. I was excited. Right. So,
Please.
yeah.
I just wanted to say something about what he was worried about. I feel like there's a business aspect for it as well. Meaning, if he's uncomfortable with an artificial intelligent robot flying an airplane full of people, there must be other people out there who are also uncomfortable with that. So, on a business standpoint of things, you could create your own airline and point towards the fact that you are going to have actual human beings in the cockpit, and that will, you know, attract more customers.
You know what
That's
I
a
would say
business
even
standpoint
before
of it.
then? You know what I would say even before then? And I love your ideas. What I would say even before then, because that's bold, hefty, and almost, you can't go create your own airline. Again, I try to make sure we also level set for what can you do today? What can you do now? There are three things that if I didn't have them, there's no way I could navigate through society. Number one, you have to have a good mentor person, and it's a team, like you said earlier, academic, so someone like a Dr. Adams who has just this breadth of brilliant knowledge about everything dealing with, from government. I've talked to you and but it spans.
What exactly?
And go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
What
this is good.
exactly is your occupation?
Yeah, I'm the chairman of the political science department here at Texas Southern
Oh, here.
University. I'm on the 4th floor.
Okay.
And also I run a graduate program, the Executive Masters of Public Administration program.
Okay, because you said you're
That's
familiar with
first
politics.
is a team, right? So it's someone who's in tech who does AI. So you could easily look up you have professors here that I saw that do in the computer science area, and they're very focused on artificial intelligence and all that. So it's reaching out to that group and saying, I'm really interested. I think the collaboration thing is something we don't do as well as we should, but that is my life. My life is filled with a team of people everywhere I go that I pull information from, and that's still to this day. The second big thing, research. I am an avid, just hyper-connected learner. Like that, you said that earlier. Is you got that knowledge and you're getting a lot. Now you have to apply that to the research of the future. And so I stay with what researchers, I subscribe to these sites that are researchers, and they actually will lay the land, kind of what the future looks like and pair that up. And then the final thing, right, is, and this all goes back to the people around you, is really tapping in and finding that third wheel of a mentor that really becomes a big motivator that also can check and validate and bounce your ideas off of, so that you're progressing. You don't want these ideas to be in your head. They need to be action. You need to be creating something. If you don't have something on mobile, you need an app. You need to be creating your own world of solutions. those three things together, and again, it still goes back to kind of the people that you're surrounding yourself, you'd be surprised at the acceleration of the things that you want to bring to bear to the market, that it can all happen and be made true. And it's funny because I talk to so many young people who they'll just say they're alone, you're like the only aviation person, you're really the main person in your group that you deal with every day. You don't really have that. So I encourage you guys to start building an ecosystem of people in the role that you can spend 1 month, 30 minutes. You don't need a lot of time. And then other folks around you, and build a team of folks that you can hit the market with running. Does that resonate?
What are the names of the videos that you guys are? What are the names of the videos you guys are about to play? Because I have to leave early and I want to watch them.
Any way we can make them available?
Oh yeah, I'm going to make this whole presentation available to you, and then however you guys post things, the links will be in there.
Okay. And what was your name again? Just so I can go to your page and probably find that.
Yeah, I was going to tell Julian to give you a Twitter account and also the Instagram. We'll share all the stuff, and Facebook. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank y'all so much.
Jillian, I'll post, I'll give this over to Dr. Jillian, I'll give it to Dr. Adams, and then it'll have, Jillian, yeah, right there.
Well, all right.
It's such a pleasure. All right, I know that I don't even know that.
Yeah, it's time. It's approaching 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it's almost 1 o'clock, so we can keep going, take a quick break. It's up to you guys, but we can continue.
Captive audience.
I
Go
love
ahead.
it.
I think he has a question.
Why? My role is a global role, it's a worldwide role, and it's all leading edge, so it's everything we've been talking about. It's mixed reality, AI, and cognitive, it's blockchain, it's all of these, everything, conversational bots. So I'm an architect and lead a book of business, and so travel all over the world, different industries that are customers that are infusing all these into their applications. That's why I said it's not just robots, they're infusing it into their actual business, all of these things. So yeah, I travel. Oh yes, 100%. And yeah, there are things that we could leverage data for to potentially become predictive in a lot of those. So we don't have all the cameras, all the senses, and all that in Austin. But if we did, there are things that would be able to pick up those things, even in the mailroom. So. So she saw, yeah. That's a stickier one. Yeah, so we would have to probably have a whole nother conversation on counterterrorism. No, it's okay. Counterterrorism is what that's a counterterrorism technologies and platforms. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
My name is Lorenzo Calloway. I'm a former alumni from this school, engineering. And I came here because I saw Trice's post on LinkedIn. I wanted to come in and have a conversation. And I think we've kind of connected via,
yeah, I thought I recognized you.
So just a quick heads up, I got a double E from here. I spent a vast majority of my career in oil and gas. Spent about 16 years at NASA managing the ISS and the Orion program. I stood both of those programs up, $2 billion programs I was managing and running. So I said that to you all to say that I'm a living example of where you all are. And you may not know where you're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years specifically, but what is value added is to ensure that you take advantage of all the technology you can incorporate into your skill mix. A big part of that, certainly from a director level, executive level, I'm looking for a set of skills, and I'm also looking for energy. Because the arena that Trice is talking about, we're moving in that direction. There's no reversing that. The ITO, the Internet of Things, all these things that are separately running and running in a silo, we're connecting. Now, from a NASA perspective, some of you may be familiar with a term called Six Sigma. Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, so from that standpoint, we're talking about 3 sigmas on the ideal perfect line. The perfect line being a straight line, 3 sigma on each side. the NASA build, the NASA build is from 6 to 9 nines in terms of design, build, processes, the whole gamut. So what we've been doing at NASA is what AI and everybody else is trying to incorporate into their business model, which is what they're talking about here. So is your background mechanical, did you say?
Aviation.
Aviation? Okay. So even though AI is coming into the model, business model, it doesn't alleviate all the various avenues that you have to now support. You know, writing code, algorithms, integration of assets, translate assets. All these things are, it's just, I mean, what happens is, the more we do AI, the wider this thing becomes, the more opportunities start to take place, and the job you thought you were going to do physically or be in the critical path as a human asset, you'll have other opportunities and other trends of the marketplace is opening up because we're advancing the ball. So in order for you to be successful, and this is just from my perspective, there's always a good reason to say why I could fail, but you can't be afraid to fail. Failing is what allows you to go forward and be successful. So it's important that you realize that you surround yourself with people like, I heard several times, networking. Networking is critical. I mean, I left NASA, did some consulting, some now with one of the largest consulting firms on the globe, with Accenture. So I came in, and we're doing a ton of different things in this space. I happen to be in what we call Industry X.0, which is the next level of integration. I'm involved in that. I've got tons of clients I'm putting in the critical path, and that opens up a ton of assets for managing assets. And here's one quick question for you, or more of a statement. Most companies, big companies, you think it's ExxonMobil, and that's who ExxonMobil is. Within ExxonMobil are multiple companies, and they're not connected. You may think they're connected, but the integration does not exist. So as you create an opportunity to optimize your systems, what you end up doing is monetizing that, because they have so much waste. You actually make that system more efficient, and you pull the waste out of that wasteful system and apply it in other technologies. So again, my word is a word of encouragement to all of you. I mean, I'm here because I saw this stuff on the web. I want to come out and meet the professor and see what we can do in terms of bridging some opportunities for Accenture to maybe come in and look at some of the talent that's here, and maybe plug a few of you guys out of here potentially. So we'll see.
That's important.
That's why I'm here.
Thank you. Yeah, very glad to know you're Accenture. That's awesome. So we're gonna do something. I'm probably gonna share a couple of videos. You want to do that, and then we start to really move this towards this next political season. So I asked a question earlier, and I don't think I got an answer. What's your major, out of curiosity? You just walked in. What's your major? Oh, come here, because you're one of my people too, because that's the whole thing is transforming. What do you guys, and again, I'm not talking about ideology, so not political, Democrat, I'm not talking about that. What are you seeing that's shaping your perception about, do you vote? Do you all vote? Raise your hand if you vote. Are you passionate about voting? Do you understand the implication if you don't? Okay. Do you
understand that they're not here?
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay. I just need your perception. Okay, do any of you watch the news? No? So you don't watch the news. Do you know what CNN?
Social media.
Do you know what CNN is? You've heard of CNN. You have heard of Fox and all the different newses, right? Okay. Are you impacted at all by what's happening around you? In anybody? Young people? Okay. So this is what I'm trying to get to, because I couldn't get you guys to answer this question earlier. The question was, how are you being influenced by our politicians, by media? What is influencing your mind, where you get your information from, your data from, to help you make a decision about who you're going to support This is not about technology. This is your heart. What are you seeing? Do you like the direction of this country? I want to know your personal opinion about what's going on around you. Healthcare, poverty. What are you okay with this country the way it is today? Okay, I think we had a mic.
It's not based upon morals. I think it's immoral. I think that it's dishonest. I also feel as though it needs. I don't agree with the structure of the government. I don't agree with that anymore. I think that it's all it's being manipulated by business. It's being bought. I don't think it's really for the people. I think it's for the few. So I watch CNN a lot. It's one of my main stations, and I think that they give a good perspective of what's going on. I'm opposed to Fox. The media on Fox it leans toward the right. I think that some people will feel that CNN leans towards the left, but I think they give us a viewpoint of what's really going on. Overall, I think the government, the federal government, especially the president, he doesn't represent any of the morals and values that I was raised on. He's not for people. He's selfish. And I think that a lot of the people that voted for him weren't for their interests. As far as, I think that it's very important that people know their interests before they go out and vote. I talk to my kids. I have some kids that are in the 20s, and they fail to understand the political process and how it works. I struggle with them to try to influence them to vote. I have two that don't vote. They say it doesn't matter. So overall,
that's what I'm trying to get, and thank you for that, because it goes back to. Yep, go ahead.
I want to ask him a question. Excuse me. And it's under the heading of political efficacy. What are you doing to effectuate change? And do you feel that, given the fact that you disagree with the structure of the government, that you as an individual can actually impact on it? So I'm posing this question to you. Right.
You asking me what am I doing?
Yeah, you're dissatisfied with it. Yeah, what are you doing if it's called political efficacy to effectuate change? Do you think you have the ability from an individual standpoint? Or do you feel that you said that you disagree with the structure of the government? So what are you doing? What initiatives are you taking to bring about change? Or do you feel that you have the ability to effectuate change?
To answer your question first, I feel that I definitely have the ability to change. What am I doing personally? I'm trying to position myself to whereas I have more of a voice and an influence. I start with my family. From a macro perspective, as far as going in, I have an aspiration, if I'm able to live a little longer, I want to get into government at a local level. That's some goals that I have. I'm learning more about the process. I'm in Dr. Sherrod's class.
Okay.
A lot of the information I'm already familiar with. I'm a more mature student, so I've been out in the world a little bit, and I've seen some things. So,
and my question is not intended to be negative, but have you considered running for local office or for a state office?
Actually, I'm considering running for one of the local offices in my city that I'm from.
And
this is why I asked this question. So here's why I asked this question. There is a new citizen. It's called the omnipresent citizen, right? The citizen that has a lot of knowledge, all-knowing. I asked this for a reason, and this is going to get into some of the other things that I want to bring it all back, because there's a difference between, and this is what I see from this generation, emotion of what we see, and then data. If we were to collect all the data coming from our the White House, coming from Senate, coming from Congress, and say, okay, we had 30 decisions in one day that were made. These decisions, you categorize them and say, did they impact my social life? Did they impact my education, my education? Did it impact, what did these policies impact? And then you start to research, to understand, as an accountant, these policies that are being passed by this current presidential, by this current administration, what are they? And then you start to document and capture that in a way that you can, again, intelligence. It's building this intelligent citizen of the 21st century. So that now you have a trend of information to say 4 years ago there were policies about the environment that were going to allow us to realize certain opportunities in our environment, point system, the whole thing that we were headed toward. And now there are things happening to undo some of those policies. What's the impact? And what I'm trying to do is to help us understand how we should be using the mobile and data on the mobile, so that we start to study the patterns of what's happening and have a different kind of conversation. So I knew that conversation was going to come, because typically our conversations are about what we don't like, about the administration and the things that are frustrating, because by design it's meant to keep us distracted. How do we unlock the distraction so that we are able now to start looking at the data to empower our industry to do something different? And that's why I wanted to know what your personal opinion is about what's happening in what you're seeing, how you're getting information. And thank you for that, because we're going to unlock and enlighten some things as well, because I agree, you're the way you see things. But how do we help this generation to use all of the resources around them to start to intelligently document and capture what's happening in this society? Because I think they're going to see a lot more, and we have to separate how we feel with in all that getting a really good context and understanding. That's what we're going to try to unlock and unpeel today.
I mean, like you say a lot of this stuff happening is like a distraction and stuff like that. So that's why I don't really watch the politicians and stuff like that, because the things they do would never make me successful in life. So I just really focus on myself, and the resources that I need to better myself, that's what I use.
And the danger, so this is the extreme. This is where we are, and this is why I've been doing what I've been doing, why I think we need this. The extremes. One, we see CNN all the time, and we pay attention to CNN all the time. And not everything on CNN, just like everything on Fox. It's the way that they decide to, our minds, and it may be balanced. But if we're not going to the source of information and getting it and documenting it for ourselves, and then here you are operating in a silo to a certain degree, because we haven't made an inclusive path for you to enter into knowledge. Instead, we give you distractions. I'm with you, and I'm with you. I almost have to do both.
Distractions, with the distractions, that's a philosophy that the president's used. His whole thing is about distractions.
Actually, when I call my grandmother every day, and she's watching CNN from the time she gets up to the time she goes to bed, we're distracted as a society. And see, innovation, no, not you. The broader group of our folks that walk into the household are watching what's happening every day and paying attention, which is why
ratings continue to increase. What I'm saying is we have to be careful, because innovation and being able for us to solve problems comes when we can talk to each other without the distraction of anger, of frustration. In my day, I'm like you. I can't have anything on my brain when I wake up in the morning. I can't do my job. So sometimes I can't know. But the danger of that is that you gotta know. That's what we have to figure out how to unlock. And I'm so sorry, young lady, because you've been waiting.
It's okay. I feel like, as far as a younger perspective, I'm 19 years old. And so I feel like a lot of people my age try and remove themselves, because I feel like the more knowledge you know, you start to review the world. You become critical of every piece of information that you take in. And so it's like, if I watch TV, if I absorb all this knowledge, if I absorb all this information, now I think about when I was in elementary school, and it's like I'm researching and I'm learning, well, if they were lowering the standards, you know, for the children in the neighborhoods that I grew up in. So that's why when I went to college and I went to Howard, it was a lot more difficult for me, because I wasn't even on standard, I wasn't even on par. So I was excelling, but I was excelling to a lower standard so that the state of Mississippi could continue getting their grant money. So I feel like a lot of people remove themselves, like they are afraid of the knowledge, because the more knowledge you get, you become critical of things around you. And it's like you can't be at peace, because everything is, you know, too much. It's like when one person says something, it's like now you know how this directly affects you, and so it just kind of puts you at an unrest. And so I think that's why a lot of younger people are like, they're not as into the news or wanting to know more, because knowledge is powerful, and it can make you feel powerful, and it makes you want to do things. And if you don't know how you can get those things done, it can become frustrating.
So you just said it, and I know that you're going to be going next. You just said it. This is what I've been trying to unlock. A pathway for you to have people in your life who are going to guide and shepherd and harness all the power that you own on your mobile phone, because it is powerful. And instead of shutting it down and trying to navigate on your own, or instead of the people around you saying, I don't want to know, because when I know, I have no outlet and someone to harness. You know, back in the day, I remember we used to go to the Freed Park. It was all kind of parks, all kind of stuff, where we had people that were there that we could talk to at that time, that were there to help harness and shepherd. In this digital era, who do you go to help you know if what you're thinking is right, so that you can move on to the next thing, so that you can rest at night and sleep and innovate? We're going to come back another time, and we are going to host something different to help us to unlock all of this, because you need knowledge, you need news, you need information, and you need people that are going to help you have an outlet to grow. So keep that passion and keep that in mind, because it's so much to unload and unlock that you just stated. But we're so happy that you're here, because look how much value you added just by showing up. Thank you.
My name is Roderick Haynes. I'm an alumnus from Texas Southern University.
Thank you.
And I work at Microsoft with Ms. Johnson.
Great.
And of course I had to come and support her. And as usual, she's ahead of the game. You actually hit on all the categories where I was gonna reach, because to your point, when you mentioned that the disinformation that you have to deal with turns you off, and the young man down at the very front, where he says he's just focused on in his silo to focus on himself. Those are challenging. And the way I have, and you asked, what are we doing? And I wanted to answer that question. You pretty much said what we should do, but I'm gonna speak so it can be very relevant for those of us who have a circle of influence on their kids. I have 2 kids that, well, I have 4, but 2 of them are grown, and 1 in college, 1 just graduated. We come to our house first Sunday every month for dinner. And one of the things I do is I tell everybody, put their cell phones in a basket, put it to the side, we eat, we laugh, we talk, and we always get to 2 places, right? One, what's on TV, and my wife and my daughters talk about what happened on Scandal. Then we get to the real stuff, where we talk about politics. Because if it's not relevant to them, we in trouble. So I think for me, I can only influence so many people at a time. So my kids, their husbands and their significant others, we eat at the table and we have that conversation. And what I hear out of my kids, they repeat what their peers say. So it's so much information, and of course data is the new currency. It's so much information out there. It's overwhelming to the youth because they're inundated with their cell phones. My son now he works at Accenture Avanade, right? And I used to work at Accenture as well until I moved on to Microsoft. And the reason he got involved in IT is because he realized when he was in college, he finally picked up and got the revelation from me about technology when he was in a class and he noticed that everybody was looking at their cell phone. And he wrote a paper on it, and then he was caught up in how social media impacts everyone. So within this social media age where information is constantly pushed to everyone, it's hard to decipher what's relevant and what's not. And it takes, just like you said earlier, adults who can splice and pull out what's relevant. And some of the things that I do at my home, and I'm gonna make it real quick, probably too late, is I ask my kids, who are you gonna vote for? And of course they all say, I'm gonna vote Democrat. And they know most of my life, I've always voted conservative, right? Except for when Mr. Obama took office. And I told them it's not about the party. Look at what the party is doing for you. And if you don't know, do your research because the data's there. And and hopefully you have adults in your life or mentors, teachers, professors, doctors who you can ask those relevant questions to and say, look, this is what I understand. Because everything that you hear from this president, you're not going to see in their policies. You're not going to see in the policy that they're being passed every day. You're not going to see it. Fortunately, my cousin is in that administration, and he was able to influence something positive. And I guarantee you, this president don't even know it happened. My cousin is Leonard Haynes III, and he is working as Assistant Secretary of Education for the United States. And he wrote a bill that, and of course Trump got in front and was photo-opping everything from all these black presidents, where he actually forgave the Katrina bill. People don't know that. So when we're voting with emotion, because he's going out to his base to get them fired up. They don't even know what they're voting for. 90% of what they vote on emotion and some of the buffoonery that he puts out there in social media. I suggest that you do the extra step in looking at what policies are being passed versus what's being socialized on the media.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that was right on time. This is what this is all about. It's an open forum. This is what this is about. And I know that you would appreciate that more than anything, is that we have to look at policy. This is right on time.
Right. And I was going to say the politics is about symbolism. It's the symbolic uses of politics. That's what we say. And that was going to be my response to the young man before he left, is that there's always an appeal to a base. And you have to understand the processes of government. You're absolutely correct in terms of the policy-making component. It's in the legislative body for most of the stuff. And the president, he can articulate, he can lead in terms of proposals, but it's up to Congress to adopt the policies. But also we have to read and to educate ourselves. There's so many other reforms that could be made in the system. We're still using the electoral college when we could go to a popular vote to elect the president. We don't have to be all bent out of shape about a Supreme Court. If we simply expand the size of the Supreme Court, there's nothing preventing that. I can go on and on and on in terms of some of these reforms, but we have to educate ourselves in terms of the politics and how it impacts on us. But I'm not going to give that lecture today. I'm going to let Margaret, who's my smart, I have to study teach for me.
So we can probably start to wrap up because I know that we've lost quite a few, and we had until 3. The questions that you guys asked about this whole new world of data, this whole new world of how AI, us being able to, I know that you might have missed some of it, but that's okay. We can have an offline discussion. But is there anything else that is on your heart that you feel before we start to wrap up that is important to you? And Roderick, I can't thank you enough for saying that, because it all goes back to validate the importance of getting knowledge and getting context. Is there something you wanted to, I think this gentleman here, or?
No, I was going to tell him to be encouraged, and what I was trying to do in terms of, we say all politics is local, and if you're considering impacting at the local level, because believe it or not, a lot of the federal policies, they may have an impact, but they're not going to impact on you. They're making sure that the buses run on time, that the garbage is picked up on time, and you're more likely to know someone on city council where you can establish a relationship, you can actually influence policy, or you can know a state representative. And I would like, and I have a lot of people in the state legislature, and normally we have the legislative black caucus, and I would like to do one of the forums. They have this big deal. We can do it on artificial intelligence and how it impact on. I think I can get that proposal.
That would be important.
If you would come back, that's in January when the legislature goes into session.
I was impressed by all the AI questions that everybody was asking. I was deeply impressed with how much the students all here knew and understand about the power of intelligence and machines. And so our next goal is to host, so Roderick for years is to host a political hackathon. Sometime we're going to try sometime in January, and this time it'll go out to all the students. We'll do a lot of advertising and all that good stuff, and but that's our next. I think we're not going to stop on this, but yes, Miss Margaret.
Well, one thing I want to say, I can't thank you enough for being here. Dr. Adams was setting this up. This is the best use of a Saturday morning I've had in a long time.
I agree.
And Dawn and Josh that was here, and I think I had about 8 or 9 students that came out. And I wanted you to know that that you were competing with Texas Southern University and Southern University.
Is that today?
That's the football game, yes.
That's what I was going to tell you afterwards.
In their first Cotton Bowl Classic in Dallas. So, you could be talking about, they could have had Beyonce here today, and they would not have shown up. So
I will be back. So the reason that I did this today and why it had to happen today, there's a nonprofit, I think I said earlier, TWEF, that encouraged everybody to have one day of giving back, a global day of purpose. And she's like, well, what will you do with your day of purpose? And I said, well, I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3 people in a room. We've got to get a pulse on how is it that we can get data-driven with what's happening around us in our political community, and getting people inspired, entrepreneurship, and all the other things that we need to be doing. And I needed a pulse, so we just went ahead and plowed through this. It's streaming, so the great thing is that it is online. So for us, if we have a big online community and then a few folks here, but we now know this is a button. I think we will end up doing this again soon, probably sooner than later. You'll give me a date, and then I'll have Roderick up, and we'll come back out and do this for a bigger audience we'll pick a date that you feel is necessary, but I think that we just hit on something. What do you think?
Oh, I think absolutely it works out well. And I would just like to say thank you on the behalf of the students and also the faculty at Texas Southern University. And I hope that we've made a favorable impression on you in terms of where we are. And I know there's some consideration with other HBCUs that there's a consortium or anything to be established, that you would understand that we're in the vanguard on these issues. And certainly I welcome the opportunity to work further and to collaborate for the interests of our students at Texas Southern to make sure that they're in this space where they can take advantage of the many changes that are taking place in AI and also in data-driven decisions that we should be a part of. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
like